So I just wanted to make a short video on whether or not you should go to college. The Wall Street Journal came out with an article talking about how schools are reviving shop class to offer a hedge against the AI future. Obviously, AI is a big new thing these days, and people are scared or concerned of whether or not AI is going to take their jobs, or are they going to have to completely uproot their families and move to different cities to get involved in learning how to function with AI and work in the new industry and the new environment that is coming with AI driving it. So, but the article came out and talked about how a lot of schools or some schools are spending millions of dollars reverting, so to speak, to learning the basics of like building houses, of plumbing, of these trades that have been looked down on for the past 40 years or so, based on a report that came out back in the early 80s regarding a nation. It was called A Nation at Risk, talking about how the standards of school students was going down, and students were not learning as they ought to. And so it kind of sparked a panic on both liberals and conservative side to invest in schools and make sure that teachers are held accountable for what they're teaching, and raise the standards of the children who are learning. And so, but because that obviously 40 years now, and 40 years later, we are now living in a rapidly changing industry. Uh, but even though it's rapidly changing regarding AI, the things that we need as humans hasn't changed. We all still want to live in a house. We all still want to drive a car. We all still want to enjoy air conditioning and flushing toilets. Like, AI is not going to change the fact that we have biological needs that need to be met and need to be taken away in the most humane and sanitary way, which obviously is important to us. So I thought it was interesting, though, that it said that it did talk about American high schools began jettisoning shop class following the 1983 publication of A Nation at Risk, a federal report that urged high schools to raise academic standards. Which, against, I mean, honestly speaking, nobody should be against raising academic standards. You want kids to be proficient in reading, writing, arithmetic, be proficient in whatever course that they decide to take, as long as it obviously pays dividends and allows them to be a functioning member of society regarding taking care of their family and being able to supply their needs. But it continues down here in another section where it says that, oops, I think I passed it. Here it is. It says roughly half of college students end up in jobs where degrees aren't needed. And that was like me. I got a degree in business administration with a concentration in finance, but I went to a job where I literally had to learn everything I knew about everything I knew how to do eventually on the job. I had to learn it on the job. I learned it from my coworkers, most of whom also went to college way back in the 80s and 90s. But for me to come out of college and say I need a degree to get this job, that was one of the requirements for me to get the job that I had. But later on, I think it was about 4 or 5 years later, when I started seeing the same job postings for the job that I was in, or the jobs that I wanted to get, they was started to remove the requirement of having a college degree, because obviously it's not needed, it's not necessary. It's more of a prestigious thing versus a functional thing. It wasn't that I needed the college degree to get the job, and do the job. It was really just to get the job, because once it came to the actual doing of the job, I had to get the training on the job by people who were already working in the job, whether or not they were coming right out of college or they got their college degree 20 or 30, 40 years ago. And this is kind of what the article is saying. Half of jobs that people end up in are jobs that degrees aren't needed. And it's probably more so than that, because a lot of the jobs that you do need a degree, so to speak, you still have to learn on the job. You still have to have the intelligence, the acumen to learn what they're teaching you. Even if you're an engineer, you're not going to go into any job just automatically knowing what to do and how to do it. You still have to learn the procedures, the processes of what that company does, how they build, the formulas that they use, the math. I'm assuming no engineer just walks into a job and automatically knows day one exactly how things need to be done. The company, I'm sure, it takes them through an onboarding process that and explains to them what they need to do. So college, I think, is important. If you again, you have to start with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey says, the 7 habits of highly effective people. Begin with the end in mind. What do you want to do post college? College is not a career in and of itself. Now, if you want to be a professor, obviously, I think it's important for you to go to college if you want to learn how to teach students. I mean, what better way to learn than being around the students and learning how you yourself as a student absorb information, how your professors communicate with you. You want to be a college professor, I would say go to college, learn how to teach, learn the needs and behaviors of students, and that's obviously a great environment to be in. But if you want to be a plumber or electrician, or you want to be uh, one of these other jobs, you can just go learn from an electrician, or go learn from a mechanic on the job. Get a job at a tire shop. Sometimes you actually have to start from the bottom and then work your way up to the top. You're not going to instantly get to where you want to go. But instead of wasting time in college and wasting money and getting a student loan debt just to say you have a degree to work a job in which you won't need a degree, I think it's a waste of time. So I would say, if you have to begin with the end in mind. Start with the end in mind. Say, what do I need to get to where I need to go? And if college is that path and you've done the research on that, then you should do it. But if you realize, oh, I actually don't need to go to college, you don't need to go to college. I think more and more young people are waking up to the fact that college is not necessary to be successful in life. I think you see it all over social media. A lot of people who built their businesses are on social media, using their charisma, their knowledge of a particular subject, and using that to gain influence and start subscriptions, and are able to make tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars a year based on a brand that they built online. So they did all of that without going to college. And there's so much free information out there. That's how we're living in a new era, a new time, where if the corner information has broadened massively because of the internet. You can get information anywhere from anyone in the world who's willing to share it with you. And a lot of people do. Doctors, even these high esteeming fields that we say, doctors, nurses, um, lawyers, they're all sharing their information online. A lot of them have their own YouTube channels for whether their own personal brand or their business, and they're willing to share so much insight into what their job looks like. So even if you want to learn about what a lawyer does, what a doctor does on a daily basis, I would say Google it or use AI and find out what these jobs actually entail, so you can find out whether or not you actually want to do the things that you may have in your mind that you want to do, but you haven't really seen what it looks like in the real world. And once you see what it looks like, once you see what it looks like in the real world, you may say, okay, yeah, I definitely want to do that. Or you may be like, actually probably don't want to do that for the rest of my life. So I would say it all comes down. So you go to college, it depends on whether or not you actually want and need whatever college offers for you to get to where you want to be.